Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Oh, the anticipation, the desire, the dark. Look at that. Fade to black. No, we're here. It's Lighting the Void, live here on the Fringe FM. It is, what's today? Tuesday, July the 30th. We got a very special guest tonight, and I'm excited about this because it's been a long time since we talked to this gentleman. Quick backstory for you, and then we'll get into this. So, a lot of people ask me, where did this sigil here that I have on my arm come from? And it wasn't me that drew it. When I was searching for artwork for the show a long time ago, years ago actually, I made sure that it felt right, that it had to be right. And I ran into this gentleman's video. His name was Tecce. And he was creating this incredible tarot deck called the Shadowlight deck. And I watched him as his creativity developed, like in one of his real-time videos, as he drew out the Hanged Man. And it moved me so much that I thought, you know, this is the guy that's got to help me do my artwork. So all of the artwork, the symbols, the shack, the UFO stuff, all of this stuff is done by this creative genius, if you ask me, this man, Tecce, who is here with us today. What's up, Eric? Long time no talk, brother. I'm glad you're back on the show. It's good to talk to you again, man.
Grateful to be here, Joe. First, let me say thank you for having such a wonderful opener and having me present to have the opportunity so we can chat, catch up. It's been a couple of years, but like you said, like art loves to come into the world. We are creation itself. So being able to live this artist life and create this for the show itself is my way to support and nurture the dreams that you bring to life. Because to me, that's the greatest riches we each could have, to follow not only our hearts, but the ability to honor and embrace our nature, because you never know, the gifts we have could change the world.
Yeah.
So, good to be here today.
Yeah, dude. Like I want everybody, like tarot cards. It's hard when you look at a tarot card, and I've seen lots of decks, bro, and not too many of them just moved me. You know, I just know the symbolism. But like the deck that you created, and I even told you off air before the show, I had another gentleman that was on, just fell in love with the deck. Even to this day, I think he ordered it a long time ago, but he still loves the tarot deck. And, you know, I did want to talk a little bit about creativity, you know, the astral light, a lot of stuff that I think nowadays isn't so woo anymore. Like people are really coming to understand it. And, you know, I was reading this book last week, that was written in the 80s about astral travel and stuff. And there was some pretty extravagant stuff on there, but still, yet this was the 80s, right? And some of the ideas that they were talking about was real, like the etheric double and the magnetism that they were being pulled in from the body. And I thought, man, we have come so far, because now if you get on YouTube or anywhere else and you type in astral travel or the out-of-body experience, it's become a big subject, right? The spirituality has become a big subject. Metaphysics has become a big subject. And with that being said, I just want to say this. It makes it even harder sometimes to explore authenticity, to find authentic people in the spiritual realm, dude. And you are by far one of the most authentic people in that realm. And I'm glad that you're still creating and doing your art. And I hope that every single one of my listeners checks it out. You can go to your website, erictecce.com, and go to the shop, check all that stuff out. But you're working on some new stuff now, right? Tell us what you got.
Yeah. So earlier this year, since Shadowlight Tarot came out, I released Astro Herbal Collection, which is a 3 Oracle deck collection. Now, this is 120 or so collection of medicinal plants. Because I studied herbalism, I wanted to create an educational tool while incorporating my illustrative skills. So I pen and inked each one of these plants, and I plan to revisit these with color, with painting, but the intent was to create a collection. Now, currently, since I've released this, I've gathered multiple ideas, because I think with universe, we're adapting and changing to the circumstances. And sometimes the inspiration moves us. So now I'm on track to actually release 3 Oracle decks, and they're all coming together right now at the same time, which was a surprise to me earlier this year because my roadmap was looking towards more this natural herbalistic route. But then I ended up revisiting Shadowlight. So in which case, I'm taking the last decade of my art from everything Edgar Casey, Coral Castle, Nikola Tesla, Walter Russell, all of the cosmic stuff, all of the occultic and esoteric illustrations, and I'm reinventing them into an Oracle deck. And that's going to be my next upcoming release, which right now it's in work in progress. I'm eventually going to film trailers for it and then announce it. But as it comes together, it's looking beautiful. And one thing as an artist is just, I just do the work regardless. As long as the artist lives the life, the art will be created. So most of the people who, like you said, are authentic, you don't see them often because they're not looking for the limelight. They're living the experience. And universe is wanting the experience in its own right. So the artists of the world, the creators of the world, they will mirror the same fractal essence of creation itself. You won't see creation, but like all synchronicities, it's not the creation you're seeking, it's the rival. And most of the time, creation arrives to us just like inspiration. And with my tarot deck right now, that I look back at Shadowlight, I look at this body of work, I always revisit it. And now to come again with my upcoming Shadowlight Oracle, I'm like re-honoring the same meaning Shadowlight brought to the world while also extending that body of work even beyond what I knew, because the ability that I can show up years later to not only revisit this art, but to discover it again and even add to it and bring more skill to it. I feel that everything happens for a reason, that all of this work that has led up till now can come back to us, can come to serve us. That makes us think that maybe some of the little things that we do in our life could help us down the road that we don't realize gives us something that ultimately makes a whole new avenue possible, because life is always changing. And let's face it, you can't escape the eclipses, and I don't think anyone else can. So when life
Now's an
offers
intense
you
eclipse.
facility,
Yeah.
I cannot deny that at all, man. I think we're going into a whole new avenue of life, but I think it's starting from the inside out, as with all things. But one day at a time, that's how we take it. But this eclipse season right now, I definitely see myself not only getting myself back into the core of who I was, because this eclipse aligned with my Eris, which just happens to be one letter off from my actual first name, Eric. So this embodiment of not only staying true, but authentic, it just speaks to me at this eclipse time that more so than this year, with Mars and Jupiter helping out, so much of me is just not only bringing itself out into the world, but this is the reason why we all have cycles, so that we can actually not only show up where we need to, but the right place, right time makes it look easy almost. It makes it look like we wake up every day just to be like, wow, this is what I want to live my life for. This is why I'm here. And I think when we're exposed to that, we're really a step closer to not only talking to who we are as a person, but understanding the soul. And I think so many people are so disconnected from them own self that we use tools like astrology, we use divination like tarot and oracles to help give us information because we're seeking guidance external to ourselves. But in reality, you will know that everything that you ever need to know, or ever want to know, is not only within you, but will show up to you as long as you just simply ask. And I think that's how universe operates to a degree, because when you're of creation, when you're of the art, there's a connection to you that may not always be spoken. It's like when we nurture a child, we see something that we create into the world, but now we want to see the best of it. It can be its own being, it can be its own light, and people will perceive it its own way and will go through its own experiences. But we want to make sure that what we can pass on will help it. But we need, like the zodiac, all the resonances to give us that balance, because we can give nurturing and nurturing energy, but we also have to have the idea of how to do the hard work to get to where we need to go. And I think that's why we see masculine and feminine as huge principles, not only in our reality, but in the esoteric and the cultic teachings.
Yeah.
It's the idea that we need to see not just the polarity, but the way that we can have a dance. We need to breathe in just as much as we have to breathe out. So it's all encompassing in a way.
Makes you wonder,
We navigate it.
right? Like I know you study astrology intensely. I was on a show earlier today, and they were talking about the masculine and feminine. All this stuff, the esoteric teachings, astrology, the tarot, the Kabbalah, whatever, herbs, astral travel, all of it is playing a part of the same story. It's all working together. And like I was talking about this thing, cycles, is something we have to pay attention to that a lot of well-known esotericists and occultists are aware of, but I don't think it's talked about enough, is like astrology showing us cycles, that cycles matter, right? And then even between man and woman, I've realized at 42 years old now that even men, or the masculine energy, has cycles. It's not just feminine. It's not just this feminine 28-day kind of cyclic energy. Men have cycles. We kind of, or at least the masculine energy kind of goes towards this driving passion, and it just goes towards it, whether it's direct at a high velocity or chaotic, it just goes towards it. And then all of a sudden, one day it gets bored. It don't know why. It just gets bored with that. It's done. Could take years. And then all we can do, or all the masculine can do, is either sit around or plead towards spirit again. Show me what's next. It's almost like we have to sit around and wait, which drives the feminine crazy. Like, what happened to this thing that it was moving, that we could take this energy and grow the seed out of, Now it's just sitting here. And it's like it's waiting again. And I've started to notice, like, after, just studying astrology for a few years, and the tarot too, that, man, cycles are everything. Honestly, they really are. Makes up our whole reality. Which I want to get into astral travel too about that. But I'm curious as to what you think about that.
So the one number you brought up, 28. So let's look at that. So 28 is what we perceive as the days available to us when we look at the moon cycle.
Yeah.
But now let's look at 28 in terms of years. You're looking at the Saturnian cycle, which is why you see the moon linked to Saturn, because the way that these fields are connected, that's the fractalness of a cycle. Now, the thing is, what we're experiencing when we have a solar return, our birthday, is that moment that we've had a connection between the sun and the stars. Where the planets are, we're always changing that connection. So let's say we do have these masculine and feminine forces. A Mars and a Venus are always present in all of our charts. Now, in my case, I have an opposition where the Mars can look at the Venus and the Venus can look at the Mars, and it can actually observe one another to work together. Oppositions bring union in the middle. So balance is key. When you have balance, that's how creation comes about. Look at the zodiac, for example. You have to exist as Aries, then you have to come into the physicality of bringing it together with the Taurus. So the Gemini allows these two connections to form so that the field can come in. Once you have the connections forming of this masculine connection and this feminine field, you're using these two forces to create something new. That's creation in a nutshell. That's art in a nutshell. Cycles are the same way. When we have to create something, we need to pull out a canvas. We need to pull out a tool, a medium, so that we can actually not only just write, express, bring out aspects of our nature, our light, a perspective that maybe only our own experience has shaped into experience. So the way we express that out, that's why you see the rising sign is just as important as expressing how we come into being, just as much as how we're coming out from our being, which is why it's just as much as an arrival. Then in between that, of the two forces coming together, that's where your true self is. So that balance is key. Now, as we create a dynamic with one another, we're all going through different cycles. We're all experiencing a different relation to the planetaries. Like I said, a solar return is relation purely between the central sun, which is the heart of our solar system, you can say. It is the way in which we're receiving light from source. And it's bringing that to us so that we can embody. And embodiment is the most important thing, because the way we communicate with the energies and frequencies around us has to come to what's available. We as creators have to think outside the box. We have to create with what we have to work with. When we're born, we're giving a set of tools, a parent, a location, a time, and even a name to show up, not only on this planet, you can say, but in the way of expressing all this energy around us. And our cycle, us showing up to be a part of the cycle, is just as much a reason that we can perceive in here, just as we can't fathom the whole intensity. But us as individuals, we have organic bodies where we have cycles of organic matter existing. For example, our ancestries can pass on through DNA. We're getting cyclic knowledge through the fact of our own bodies being familiar with it because our ancestors eat this food. Our ancestors had these experiences, and our ancestors had these cells that went through something that is then continuing this on. We carry our wounds from our parents just as much as we carry our traumas. The idea is that we are the building blocks to carry generational conditioning to transform it. Whether we address that or not is more of a lifetime goal. But for us to deal with the cycles at hand is saying, here are the tools to work with today. How do you create your art? And what do you want to create in that art? And as we're all drawn with our own moon to have a field, we connect and are drawn and attracted to with a Venusian energy to be drawn into something, to connect into something, become inspired. And you never know where inspiration comes from.
Right.
It could also be just exposure. I think in today's age, when you go into the educational system, you don't see the potential of humanity. But then when you look at online, this internet that connects us, not only have we shared experiences to not only grow and understand not only the level of this woo that people talk of, it's no longer woo. Why? Because we have so much of us that the uncommon sense has become the common sense.
Yeah, a lot of the spiritual stuff is becoming, well, I'll say this too, bro. Like, I would rather people listen to what you have to say. Not saying I'm not judging or anything, but when I get on I'll just tell my audience this. You know how I picked the psychic with Mary? Mary Ducina was the most authentic psychic I could find.
Mhm.
I did the same thing with the artist, Eric. Eric is the artist to me that Mary is to the Psychic Call-In show. To me, you're that artist. It's just a connection that I feel with you, right? Like authenticity kind of, I guess, sees authenticity. But when I look at the YouTube channel of like tarot and people doing astrology, it kind of perplexes me a little bit because I'm into the old ways a lot of times because I think there's great knowledge there. Like Eliphas Levi's books, I've been reading those again. The whole, you know, the whole story of spirituality and especially Western esoteric knowledge is built inside this tarot deck and understanding the stars and astrology and all this stuff too. You know, the 3 stages of Hermeticism. It's all built in there. The moon, the sun, and the stars. And then when I watch these tarot videos, it's like all about Aquarius. Well, your energy is, your ex is having a terrible time, and it's almost like it's just a lot of clickbait almost. I'm not saying they're wrong, but it's a lot of stories that serve the ego of the person that's watching. And then when I listen to what you say about the tarot and stuff, it's tapped into the energy. It's almost synchronistic as I'm studying it, even as you're kind of talking about what's going on. And I don't know why. I guess we like stuff that serves our ego. Like we lose the idea of the cyclic energy, and then we also are attracted to stuff that inspires us, like you said, but also serves the ego. That's a whole other play that's going on, you know. And I think that I'll get into this later, but I think that has directly affected my ability to get out of body and have more conscious experiences because that's my plot, right? I just want to experience consciousness on the level that the human body will let me at max capacity, right? Like,
You see,
and I think these cycles have something to do with this.
the questions you seek, for example, let's say back in the day, I wanted to be a lifeguard. But to be a lifeguard, I also had to ensure that I was able to swim enough and hold my breath long enough. And if I wasn't able to show up for it, I could have this idealism of being able to perform a task. But I think at the end of the day, I have to work with my nature. Now, the thing is, you said earlier, the authentic psychic, the authentic artist. I think the nature of our authenticness is to honor who we are. For example, how we are and who we are is just as much of the art of who we are and how we are. It's a paradox because when you look at anywhere in astrology, the way that you're coming in talks to you how you're coming out just as much. They speak to one another like yin and yang. You cannot have one without the other because they're telling you how one operates. For example, your sixth house will come out in a 12th house manner. We can understand ourselves, but our nature is still present whether we know it or not. That is being in tune to your heart. Now, some of us can have a birth chart where we balance ourselves out. Sometimes our chart needs somebody else to balance us out. Sometimes people bring in stuff so unique. But in my case here, I just happen to show up with the right thing at the right time. I trust my process. I know I will wake up and be myself. And I know because of my Lilith and my sun placement being together, I'm not only staying true to who I am, but I'm bringing the most central idea of who I am, since Lilith is the union of the earth and the sun in terms of its magnetic potency. It's the central point of bringing these ideas together. So being in center of who you are is not only ideal to be individual, it's the idea of the rebel in a nutshell. The idea of independence rebels against any system or idea only because you need to have a system to have the rebellion. So for you to be an individual, you need to have all of these cycles, all of these flavors, all of these lights. And for
You need to
us,
have all the stuff that you don't relate to, right? You need to have it there to
not,
define it. Yeah.
not
Yeah.
only the stuff that we don't relate to, but in comparisons, to know the difference, to know how we are. For example, I can't stop who I am, but if I learn to understand who I am, I work with that more. I connect with it more. But then let's look at it this way. For example, I've had a lot of experience lucid dreaming, but in my case, I have this instance where I have a stellium where the Neptune, the Uranus, the Mercury, and the Saturn are creating this structured way of a synchronistic machine that creation itself, universe, brings this through into my experience through the external, through the way I connect one on one, or through the way I'm even experience universe itself. Because so much can come in through this way, this gives me not only the synchronicity of Uranus, but it allows me to also work with the dream realm through the Neptunian sense, while also Mercury allows me this Saturnian support to keep this wide amount of information. And because you get this wide amount of information, this is the reason I was able to recall my dreams. This was the reason I was able to perform whatever art my nature can do best. And I think that's really what we need to do, is that the more that we try to inform ourselves who we are, the easier it is just to reaffirm ourselves that we were probably right in our hearts all along. We just needed to have us told it. We just needed to see it. We needed to witness it. Because when we witness something, we have an experience. And that's what teaches us the most out of anything. Like
Oh, yeah.
Leonardo da Vinci,
Yeah. Yeah.
wisdom is the daughter of experience, or experience is the daughter of wisdom. I'm not the best with quotes. I
Yeah,
am
man.
Da Vinci,
Dude, it's all in
where
the tree.
I am
It's
so good at
all
quoting.
there in the tree too, man. Like I love the Kabbalah because the tree teaches it. Astrology teaches it, but the tree teaches it as well too. It teaches everything that you just said. What I what I have found out through well, I've been doing this sale like because we were raising funds to get a new air conditioner for the shack, so I was doing tarot readings. And I do tarot readings different than a lot of people, so I get a little nervous because I know it's going to mirror things, right? And some of those things aren't easy to talk about for people. But everything that you just said, based on the readings that I've done with people, is spot on. It's almost like the mirror. It's almost like the mirror shows them on a deep enough level to just deep enough to validate them for them to say, "Well, I knew I was right. I was right about that all along." Because they have that. It's like that question that trying to build your intuition. I feel this way. I should go this way. My heart's telling me this. But they need some type, I guess, I always thought it was like leadership, but maybe it's just the mirror. They need the mirror to say, yeah, that's exactly what it is, or to
Some of
trust
us
it.
take it in that way, though. That's the thing about experience. Look at every single one of the placements in anyone's chart. The Mercury tells you how you're processing just as much as the Venus tells you how you're creating, just as Mars's direction, and the Jupiterian is where you're putting all your energy into just as much as your Saturnian structures. They give us the building blocks to see how we're communicating. Now look at the zodiac. The zodiac is this fractal infinite category of light in which we're looking at cycles itself. The way that something comes into being is Aries, it's carrying forward. Look at the symbol. It's two forces coming together so that it can come together into the Taurus, in which case you're continuing this journey just like Pisces is to release it out. The cycles of the zodiac tell us through the symbolism itself. Like you said, through the Kabbalah, look at Saturn as a symbol. You see the cross and then it comes out from it. Now, what you're actually seeing is actually how Saturn operates through the Kabbalistic layer. You see Saturn as the input of this masculine sense driving this force in. And as it creates that curve, what you're actually witnessing is essentially this energy coming together. And as we form that wave, the sun embodies it in the center, while all the forces come in through the sun and the sun comes in through us, which is why we're embodied here with the moon and earth.
It's reflected, into
Moon
this.
sun.
All right. So now, cool stuff. So we understand this communication between creation and us, this nonstop need to express ourselves into the void of creation and then back and forth. So it's like this figure eight play all the time, that I
Not only that, if you're aware enough, if you're present enough, if you allow yourself to embody yourself enough in your presence, not only do you give yourself more admittance, but universe is more then attracted to your experience, in which case
Right.
the communication of synchronicity is the communication of universe arriving in your experience due to how present you are, you can say. It's not even that. Sometimes, when you said earlier, the guidance we seek is sometimes out of the root of doubt. And we don't want to doubt ourselves, but not knowing the self is the same reason we are coming to be embodied without memory of not only past lives, connections, but even ancestry. We're not here to know. We're here to have ignorance so that we can learn by experience. If we're here to take on something many of us would dismiss, not only the experience, but some of the lessons, we're here to counterbalance just as much as we're here to balance. Our role as the individual, we're all a part of it, whether we're passing on the generation, is the choice of how much we commit to what we have and who we are. So it does come full circle, but we can communicate with universe as long as we participate with it. As long as we see the universe in itself, we see within us. So we can exchange, we can communicate. Whenever you're seeking guidance, it doesn't have to come from just tarot and oracle. It will come from anywhere you're choosing to interact with what you can call random, spontaneous reality. I call it waken reality, but it's the sense to be able to wake up just like in a lucid dream. You're not any more there than what you were before. You're just more willing to witness it.
Yeah. So taking all that into consideration, I've studied both sides of the out of body experience. Right. I'm always going to be fascinated with the out of body stuff. The out of body experience works exactly like the fundamental things that we're talking about as far as, the stages when you get out of body. So you got the physical, right? Then you got this etheric lunar body, which is almost like your double. Now, if you think about it esoterically, it is a reflection of that sun to the moon, right? So Robert Monroe talks about this. You got this etheric double that can kind of just walk around the earth and play around a little bit. And it's just like you in this reality. If you're really good at being a ghost and playing in that realm, you can affect this reality. That's a little out there, but whatever. But as you keep rising through that sphere or this place, you'll leave that etheric double and become something entirely different. And William Buellman talks about, as he realized this through his travels, he could become a complete ball of light, right? Not just his etheric astral double flying around and playing around, but after years and years and years of just astral traveling, he became this ball of light. He started noticing that he could just wanted to be more of whatever he wanted to be. And it was actually a star, right? If you think about it, it's like this is ball of light, dude. So all the Hermetic teachings are, if you don't ever study them and you go do the out of body stuff, you'll see that you have a physical body, which is the earth. Then you have this etheric double, which is what has been transcribed in the astral realm and in moonlight. And then you have this solar kind of light being that you are. And it's like, once you feel and experience the truth of that, things get a little bit more interesting, right? Now, I haven't gotten past the etheric double. Like, I've gotten on the edge of it, but I keep falling off into, like, just a dream. But I don't know. Just curious as to what your experiences are with that. Like, do you find it easier to astral travel when you're creating more, or do you just, is it random for you?
I take a different route. See, in my eyes, I don't like to control. I actually like nature to be honored. In my case, I stand different from other individuals because everyone wants to shape and have an ideal and morph things to
Put
make
stuff
it
in the
into either
categories.
perfectionism.
Yeah.
And then a lot of things with lucid dreams too. A lot of people emphasize the fact that they purely want to create something. Like they'll generate something in the dream. They'll feel where they're dreaming. What they do is up to them. They can pursue to refine that skill. Like for me, if I was to sketch or draw something, I make it look too easy because of the skill that has been brought up for the experience that I personally was able to bring into reality. Now, here's the thing too. We are essentially light. We look at the Walter Russell principles here. When we look at even the embodied self, we're looking at the reflection of light itself inside. So what you're doing is an encapsulation, which is why we have trines working out for connections just as much as perspectives of squares giving us challenges. We're navigating how we're reflecting, which is why we're always reflecting off one another and the experience itself. So for us to go through these different bodies, it's like a psychedelic experience. First, we need to understand it's capable, in which case we're then given the idea as we explore any other topic that as we invest where our interests lie. Some people might want to, for example, the Akashic records. People like to have an idea that they can connect to the ideas itself.
Yeah, like the Rainbow Bridge and the Akashic Library. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Exactly. So there's a lot that we can connect to, that we conceptualize the idea, even if the breaking down of the concepts to the origin of how they even came out into the lexicon. We're looking at not only a change of use, but the way in which we're perceiving it based off our exposure. So for those who don't have the occultic or esoteric knowledge, this is new to them. But for those who dive into it, for example, that you understand not only the principles of how we have the shape of these fields around the central heart of a sun, the soul, the way that we're connecting to be, the way that brings light in the field, the O into being, the organism, the way that we're bringing it all into being is the same reason we're from and of reality. We need to be both. We need to be able to bring ourselves from it, but we need to be a part of it because
so you don't. You're saying that you don't try to control the out of body experience, like you just kind of.
I try not to. After lucid dreaming so many times, I don't want to force it. I just am there to explore. I'm there to explore nature. When I walk on a trail, when I walk in the forest, I don't want to take the trail sometimes. I just follow my heart. I follow what feels right. But the thing is, I'm also not there to take the forest down. I'm not there to build something. Yeah, we have the potential to do whatever we want. This body is based off the material. The light body is based off the potential of our light in general. We're operating out of the light itself, the sun, the soul, in this idea of existence. And the thing is, we embody ourselves because we want a challenge. We want to experience. We want to be able to learn that the stove is hot. We need to have something to give us the idea. So not only do we grow spiritually, but we actually embody more of the conscious reasons. Now we can have this desire. We can want a lucid dream. We can want to have these bodies. But the capability of the energies exposed to us in this time, for example, the Kali Yuga is a big part of how much we're potential, as well as, for example, generational conditioning, what you're exposed to with your body, what you take in, and then you got to look at the frequencies available to you.
It goes back to the cycles you're talking about. Maybe we're trying to force ideas. It's not evolutionary ready for it, not naturally ready. It could or it couldn't be. right? Like we could just be in the slow stage of development that we don't know about. And the more we try to force ourselves to go to the 12th dimension or whatever, like, so we can manifest a car on the earth or whatever it is, it's not,
That's the loophole.
yeah, it's not like, could be working completely opposite of that, actually, that what we think it is. But I see what you're saying.
The
Too much
exposure is
control
important too.
mess it up.
I think look at today. In the 90s, you saw, I categorize this as like essentially the rise of UFO and paranormal culture, not only as identity on network television, but as identity of discussion, of interest. You have the X Files coming, you have this zeitgeist of these ideas. Now, you have generations since then being able to not only process that, but this is the same reason why you see predictive programming. The exposure of the ideas gift you the concept. We're exposed to the alphabet without even knowing the full extent. I created something called the art of symbolism, where the way that we look at language and how we use it, I don't think we lost it. I just don't think many of us are taught it, just like in public education. We're not taught the general idea of how to actually navigate and operate the world to our advantage. We're given the building blocks. And if you categorize yourself to remember something to do it right, are you embodying it? Or do you know why you're doing it? Or are you operating the wax on, wax off? So for us, we need to operate things based off our nature. We try to force that. We try to challenge that. We try to do something we're not as keen to when we're not ready. I mean, that's where we find backlash. That's when we find opposition. That's when we find almost fear that not only holds us back, but can take us off our path, because that's also important. You can get back on your path just as much as you can get back off your path. And that's the same with any of these bodies, any of these light bodies. You can get lost in these other worlds. But the thing is, when we're coming to be embodied, we're not 100% trying to escape these bodies. Yes, we might have Piscean aspects. Yes, we might want to explore lucid dreaming, bring these ideas into being. But those who witness the UFO, those who have the NDE, those are the ones meant to have the alignment based off the cycle available in that perspective to bring that to the world. And it's not just for them to have it. Most of them have it because universe weaves it into reality. That story reaches out into the world. The experiences accumulate. So not only we have credential authenticity of not only the valid experiences of NDEs, but UFOs, concepts in general, experiences in general. Even if we don't understand it in the same sense, the way that we contextualize it based off the information available always gives us something, the ability to look back and then take something we already witnessed and then transform it into a new lesson, into a new understanding. There's times where I look at astrology, it's a lifetime of learning. I will know that I don't know everything. That's the one thing I know that I know.
Yeah, it's
The means that I'll spend a lifetime learning it all. But that doesn't mean you're still going to get exposed to it. And the more you have exposure to it, the more you're aware. So if I, for example, I created this art of symbolism because I know what it's like to go through school, but if I had to raise a child, which were many of us who are raising families right now are facing, do we allow the public education system to give our children this, or do we create a new homeschool method? And I think many of us are looking in the same idea that Walter Russell did back when he created a homeschool course. The idea is that we want to be able to pass on knowledge. How we do that is how we empower one another. I think my best idea to power people is to give them tools, just like giving them an exposure of knowledge is a tool because they're exposed to the word, the idea, the concept, to then navigate closer. I think we're navigating by inspiration because we want to know what talks to us. What are we inspired by? What lifts our spirit? And where does that motivate us to really know that now that we're inspired, where do we throw that action with the Mars? We need to work with what we not only have, but the availability present with us. I think many of the navigations, whether it's this body, the light body, we may want to go into it. But I think honestly, we find the more enriching experiences when we're not trying to force it. You sort of just arrive in it to the fact that you were not even expecting. I believe some of my best experiences were outside expectations, were outside my expectation period. That's how I feel. I come in for the experience because that's the most beautiful thing you can actually have in any life. So to have an experience that will show you something that never existed, is that not what universe comes to exist in its first place? To give us the potential, not only to seek it, but to explore every facet of it. You may call that cycles, but that is no different than, like, let's say the way electromagnetic field operates, how it comes to existence, to releasing itself out into the world. Speaks the same principles the zodiac does. Now look at the alphabet. We're looking at the way the energy moves. This is the way that we conduct the way of energy. So when you look at words themselves, that can deconstruct something. You look at the vowels. Every five gives you the ability to connect movement. And it's math, but it's not just the math when you look at symbols. I think many of us take into numerology and astrology, but I like to study manuscripts back in the day. I like to study different languages and stuff like that and see how it all fits together. Even if I don't 100% understand it, I use creative thinking to piece it together. And I think many of us are operating where we have tools of symbols and ideas that we're missing pieces of. We're
Man,
missing many pieces that are coming to the surface. We're remembering. We're having a great remembering now, not only of our past life, but our sense of knowing that we're drawn to it. It's not to remember I did that. It's to remember I'm drawn to that. And many of us have that when we're born, regardless, whether you're drawn to a culture, a taste, a flavor, even that you're drawn to something that's entirely somewhere else in the world. We're drawn to something because it's connecting to us, but it's also speaking a language that we have within us, which is why our charts show us not only what we're drawn to, but why we're connecting to what we're connecting. How we're arriving is so important because universe is arriving always. The past existed already, but we're here.
what you said about the alphabet though was one of the greatest realizations that I had studying Western magic was that like people need to understand the only reason why I get involved with Western magic is because it speaks to me, just like you're saying. I'm
Mm.
drawn to it. Right? It's a system that I'm drawn to. The Hebrew alphabet, when I got into that, they take all the vowels out. Actually, the vowels are little dots and stuff outside the consonants. But they figured out, and this is the reason why so many magicians use the Hebrew alphabet. They figured out that it's a magical system based on numbers and different meanings and correspondences. Right? It was one of the first, I guess, one of the first languages that we started doing that with awarely, right? Like the Golden Dawn started doing it, but they were doing it way before then. Apparently, there were cipher manuscripts. Who knows how it came into being? To me, it doesn't really matter. But
Really.
I kind of see what you're saying because Paul Foster Case gets into this. Man, I wish I could talk to you more about this. I wish we had more time to talk about this. Paul Foster Case broke away from the Golden Dawn and specifically focused on the letters and the tarot. And he would make all of his students not only sound out the letters, draw them perfectly in an artistic way. He had a book that taught you how to draw them and all this other stuff. Every letter had a frequency, a symbol, and a sound to it. And if you were going to have a tarot deck, you had to color the tarot deck. In other words, you had to put your energy into each card,
Mhm.
right? And there was something
It's
magical.
true.
It just helps you understand how powerful the letters are, right? And I wonder, since you're getting into that, if you can kind of go into that a little bit more. Like, I'm not talking about just Hebrew. I'm just saying that's what I know about is the Hebrew alphabet. Are you saying that the English alphabet is the same way? Like we could do that with our
Well, look
alphabet?
at okay, let's take any word period. So, like for example, the most familiar one to use your name. Your name is an expression of the symbols you're embodying most because it's the most exposure to a symbol. Whether you are pronouncing it correctly has nothing to do with the fact that you still see these symbols. And I think symbols, just like the dream world, speak to us to tell us something not only based off us, but for example, when you have a dream you'll have a significant other in the dream, but they're really representing your feminine self. Now, we take these same types of principles that we see not only in our reality, but the way letters are formed. These symbols, they speak something. When you have a circle, you have this infinite. But when you have a square, you have this coming together. These shapes, they're important for a reason. Now, that's why you get the secret geometry. That's why you get the frequencies. That's why it all comes together. Now, the development of English through the years, through everything. Now, where we are now, we can't just suddenly go back unless we're going to tap into our light body and get a perception of what has happened, which we're capable of. But not all of us have these types of tools. But The idea is that we're never going to 100% know. We can validate through experience, but even then, that's individualistic. For us, we can look at the symbols and create a tool. And I think the greatest tool we can do is a tool that everybody knows. Now, for the language, look at English. We all know English. Now, for your name, Joe Rupe, let's take that for example. The J, that is the generating. That is coming out from something. It arises. Now, the thing is, when you got an O, it's your field. It's the expansion of your field. It's how you hold something. That's when you see God, G is generating. It comes from the middle and then creates a spiral. So O is the continuance of the spiral and D is the embodiment. So God would be the embodiment of energy that we're all experiencing. That's how those names come about. So for Joe, Joe would be the rising of your field of energy, which is E. You put the PE and the H is in there. You can complicate it. But
you know what it means in Hebrew too? Is it means increasing in the judgment of God is what it means in Hebrew.
And that's the thing. Most of the English letters, most of the symbolisms, when deconstructed based off the symbols that are representing each letter, you arrive at the deconstruction, whether you're looking at it in Latin, French, wherever, that the same concept comes to mind, that if I can take the English and convert it to the way that you even sound it, you can understand not the language of letters, but the language of how the sound is coming from us. When you're making a T, we're bringing our teeth together to a point, and the T comes into it. So T is this is the energy, and this is it coming out. So the reversal of that is if this is the function, this is the motion. That's the masculine, this is the feminine. So each one of the letters that we pronunciate has that effect. So whether we're spelling on purpose or we're just casting the way that we're expressing something, whether we want to shape it into a language only, we're still creating waves like cymatics. We're still creating the way it comes from us. That's energy we're investing. So there's not only the spoken way of doing it, but then there's the intention. So you have a heart and then you have a direction of energy that you get to emit from your being.
Two things I want to say that real quick. I don't want to cut you off, but I will lose this thought.
Go ahead.
First off, like magic is everything you just said makes sense about the secrets of vibrating God names and stuff like that, and angelic names, the sounds that they make and what they represent and all this stuff. Secondly, even magic, going into the psychedelic realm, Terrence McKenna, when he met the Machine Elves, what did they show him? They were like, pay attention, look at what we're doing. And they were making shapes and sounds with their voices. Just some crazy language it sounded like to us. What is that? He's lost his mind. But they were shaping stuff in the astral realm with these sounds, right? And then they would show them, look at this, look at that. Pay attention to what we're doing, right? That's what they were telling them. And literally, I think what you're talking about, what you're tapped into, and vibration itself is what Helena Blavatsky and a couple other people started to figure out as they got older. Oh, like how things actually come into existence through the astral, so to speak, or what they call the astral light, and why vibratory names of God names or even just sounds matter so much to us, man. Or even looking at the letters. Like when you look at it, like you're saying, you could see how it comes out. Pretty trippy. I just started thinking about all that stuff when you were saying that,
It's just like religion. We need guidance. We need guidance because some of us might not have all the tools available to us. So putting the principles in something that we can digest without fully processing gives you an experience so you can process it later. I think we're all taught the idea of English because at one point in time, we had to generate these symbols as languages. Even if you look back from the Greeks, with the way that we're pulling this into the reality is that these choice of symbols. Let's look at A. This is the extent of energy of something. So when you look at the letter, like B, is just as much important when you see it this way, because when you say B, you're with your lips. So it comes out and unravels just like the letter. So what you're seeing is how the energy comes out just as much as you're seeing what it takes to say it. But if you went through every single letter, you would deconstruct. Not only is the letter giving the symbol, because we're trying to understand what we're making as a noise, but we're also categorizing a system to work with. So even if we don't have all the answers, we're building the building blocks to work with what we can do. I think that's the greatest art we can. Now, if we're coming into a great remembering, I should say, that's the Kali Yuga coming whole again with these cycles. We're coming more in tune to welcome in more light from the galactic center, just as much as the sun itself is welcoming the potential of where it's navigating. So we're of the moment. And if the sun is of the moment itself, and we're extension of that, we're continuing that. So in our light, bringing that out, whether we brought in this language, brought in these symbols from the astral realm, it's more in case that we created something to contextualize building blocks, even if they're not perfect. I think many of us create a vision. We bring our dreams in to record something because we might be gifted something extra. We write things down so we don't forget because we're not 100% storing our ideas. We could lose stuff just as much as we can gain something.
Oh yeah.
But we can also become distracted. It's a two-way street. So we're not perfect, but that's the reason why we're coming here, because we don't want to be perfect. We don't want to just generate something on the spot like we do in a light pump.
Bro,
We don't want to just imagine it. We want to work hard, know what it's like to fail, know what it's like to succeed, and then know what it's like to actually fulfill not only what you meant to do, but to realize yourself in motion in the process. And I don't think we are never doing anything but gaining from our experience, even if we don't last in the body 100%.
bro, think about
It goes all over the place because we're language and then bodies again.
Yeah, but like think of so the logos that was just it was let's just call it vibration or sound or whatever.
Mhm.
As it comes down into existence into this realm through this cyclic moon and it comes into this physical reality, it's been vibrating and creating consciousness, right? That's all it's been doing is vibrating and creating. Now when it comes into the body of a baby, it's like you'll see babies, right? They'll look at their hands and they're just learning to vibrate through the body. And then when they try to do it through the mouth, they're like, right? So to me, it's just consciousness, right? That comes into this body and it's learning to utilize these vibrations, right? And then we figure these vibrations still exist in the universe, but it was us that started babbling towards each other. You know, like in how it says in the book, there's a babble on the earth. Until we started babbling towards each other, until we started making symbol. Oh, this sound means that. This sound means this. Now we can communicate. We're on a much lower, denser level here. We have to act through these bodies to create things, you know? So we need to communicate instead of just
It,
the logos creating, you know what I mean?
the zodiac is the logos. For example, where you speak of, that's one language of us understanding the logos.
Right.
Gemini is curiosity. Gemini is the ability for us to have the brain to operate. When we have our body fall asleep, we want to move it to see what it's like. We're curious. We're not like, oh, we're not going to touch that. We can't feel it. We're curious. We want to know the what if. I think like that brings me back to universe knowing it wants potential without knowing that potential. It wants experience without knowing what that experience is, because what can arise is beyond expectation. That is the most interesting. And for us, like logos, let's break down this word of symbolism quick. L. I use L as a parameter. Why? Because you're coming from a right angle into two directions. So what comes out of the world? So that's L. O is the field. So it's the field of what comes out. Now, G is generating. So what is coming out of those parameters is generating another field. And that's S, which is the transference. So that's when we look at logos, it's the field generating from what is. That's essentially in the nutshell. So when you break down the language, you realize that not only the zodiac speak this, look at Aries. Aries is the same as I rise. Aries is the A, the extent of what is. R is the continuance, because R, just like a planet, when you look at something here, when you have an orbit and it's continuing its path and something's coming from it, that's how you get an R. That's how you get a ray. It's coming from the source. It has to extend from it. So Aries, I is the connection. We are coming into being. That's why you're I am. And then E is the energy. So not only do you have this connection, you're continuing this energy of E into the S onward transference. Now you can do this with any of the zodiac And they will tell you not only the process of what they do, why we're attracted to the symbol and how that symbol works. That's why I look at art as the symbolism as this whole tool that I'm going to make a deck out of so that people can work with this, deconstruct any word. For example, you can apply this to metals. You can apply this to nature. You can apply this to Latin. You can apply this to medicinal plants. You can apply this to even esoteric and occultic stuff, the stuff that dates back to zodiac. You deconstruct these same symbols. You will arrive at the same conclusions, telling you the same language, just in the manner of the symbol. And I'm so impressed by this because I look at the symbols of the planets and the way we perceive astrology. I look at it because I want to perfect the way we're perceiving light. The way we communicate light as astrologers is essential because it's like a psychologist. If you don't know the brain well, or if you're not willing to listen to the individual, how do you connect to understand and communicate with the languages available to us? So as an astrologer, we want to communicate the language of light. And I think many of us are going to come into a roadblock where if we want to use astrology, look at it this way. True star astrology is the sidereal sense of knowing where the constellations are.
Right.
This is light as language. Now, Western astrology is what I call geosolar astrology. This is the relationship between Earth and the sun. We look at the Earth-sun relationship with a zodiacal lens. It's not the specific zodiac. It's the same concept of this cycle. Just like we see the seasons, the rising and falling, these cycles that are within us, within the seasons, within the days, within the ways we move. It comes to us all because of that. Now, when you look at that and deconstruct it on the greater scale, though, you're not only using the zodiac as a language, but the language itself becomes the symbol. And then when you look at the symbol, all behind all that is nothing but light, which is what you arrive at the Walter Russell idea, is that this light itself, what comes of us, we're not only coming from source to be light, but even this materium here is just happens to be light bouncing off and working with reflections and refractions to the point that we just happen to embody within these planetaries the sun is operating on. So when we look at the sun operating by the zodiac, where the sun is relative to the galactic center is how we communicate the zodiac as a symbol, which is why we have the precession. We need to create a system to help us understand something. And the more universal that system is, the more, I like to say, natural, because I'm a big speaker of natural philosophy. The closer we can get the principles to nature without tying it to a specific idea, as we can show it in nature, it's universe showing by example. And
That's
example is the
true.
greatest
Say that,
thing to
man.
learn.
Think about what you just said, and then I have Jeff Harmon on the podcast all the time. This dude's a badass astrologer, right?
He is
And,
great.
and he says, look, if you really study both Western and sidereal, or Western and Eastern, Western astrology seems to take the path of your experiences upon the earth, right, as you play them out. But on a deeper level, if you study your Eastern chart or your sidereal or whatever, that seems to go along with the cycles and the processes of what your soul is experiencing through all this stuff.
Yes, it is your
And I was
soul
like,
chart.
What the hell? So I started looking at both charts, and I was like, he's not kidding. Like, he's not joking. Like, both of them work. Because, we're naturally polar. We're like, which one is it? How come there's two systems? But they're really actually working kind of together, I know Rosicrucian magicians only use sidereal for some of them. Not all of them, but some of them do. I think for that reason that you talked about. But I see what you're saying. What you just said goes along with what he said, the soul to the earth. Like the solar system's already out in the universe. Then we have the
Look
other.
at soul. SOL is what we call the sun. So look at the relativity to the sun to us. It takes a moment for that light, even though we're witnessing and experiencing the warmth of the sun. The light that is existing in that moment of us experiencing is not the light emitting from that sun in that moment. That difference is the difference between sidereal and essentially what you would call Western. We look at it as a perception, like you said, the stars are the light itself, soul, embodying into this soul of the sun, in which we're embodying. So our sun is just flavored where it's leaning along the other stars around it. Just as much as the planetary, as we look at a planetary leaning into a zodiac, we look at the flavor. So it's the same light, just dancing in its own way. So when we're trying to actually navigate all of it, even embodiment, soul itself, we're seeing the connection of the light, the distance between the stars we can perceive, which is the extent of who we are, where we came from. Then we're looking at the light itself, our core, which is this idea of Western astrology relative to the sun. How we dance with the sun is a big emphasis because we look at it as how we're communicating. And it's not wrong because we're looking at the language the sun is communicating with us. But when we look at sidereal through the constellations, we're looking at the way that the universe is communicating with us. Now, if we were in this placement of the sun itself, that's the heliocentric perspective of what the sun is experiencing. Now, what the sun experiences then sends that to us. So we have an experience of the sun giving us something, an experience of us experiencing the stars. So we have to work with both just as much as we have to work with the physical body being here, just as much as we have to work with the dream body. They're a part of us. It's just where we are during the experiences shows us, are we in the body? Are we in the light? Or are we in the light of our sun, our soul? Or are we more at source? And the more where you are on that journey is probably going to reflect itself out, inside out, as within, as without, as above, so below. All those principles are exact because they are showing you by experience when you're ready, you're ready. It's not because you're ready. It's because universe has heard a calling. And now, because of interest, potential, curiosity, there's this event unfolding. Whether you're participating in it is another story. But when you look at divination, the chance of something coming together is literally an instant. You don't need to force it. You just say, universe, do you. Just like any child. The best way to raise them for them to be the most authentic self, let them do you. Let them do themselves. They will find themselves. They will find who they are. Even if they make mistakes, they know themselves more than someone trying to make them be something they're not.
Yeah,
Not everyone can
I totally
100%
agree with that with
breathe
children.
and see it.
I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't, as a father, obviously, just like the
Yeah, well,
father sends us.
you got to do both ends of
You
the
said, like,
polarity.
don't do that. That'll hurt you. Be careful of this. That'll hurt you. There is nature. There is certain things that happen. There's just
Yeah.
ways of life. As far as your questions and what you want to explore and what you think, go for it. You know what I mean? All right. But here's the rules. Here's the Saturnian thing that happens in this place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Obviously, we got that Capricornian, Saturnian energy
I
here.
tried to raise my son that way, and he
Turning
turned
and in
out all right.
place.
But it wasn't me. People always say, "Oh, yeah, your son, he's a good kid," and like, it's like, well, people have their own ideas about things. He's just another. He's another human being for sure. But he did that.
Yeah, yeah.
He did that. I didn't do that. I just showed him like he looked at me for leadership in a lot of ways as a father.
Yep. And models is all we can do sometimes.
Sure, but other than that, most of the time, I just let him be him. Which is a good thing. But when they get to be like teenagers and stuff and they start to turn they get to a certain place where you still want to guide them, and we got to take a commercial break, just a short one, and then we'll come back. You get to where you want to guide them a little bit, but then you're like, man, I already empowered this kid so much. Is he going to listen to me? No, he's a good kid.
We're just as much a product of society as we are individual self. We just got to make sure we don't lose ourselves along the way, because that's what marketing is in a nutshell. We can't let ourselves sell our soul. We have to choose, and that's why there's a terms of contract. We can't force it, but they're asking. Whether we show up for that is a different story. So honor who you are at the end of the day.
Man.
You'll find your answers.
By the way, the summer sale that I'm doing here for tarot readings are about to end. There's 70% off right now. If you get an hour of my time in a Golden Dawn spread, that's probably going to end in a week. So go check it out at the Patreon shop and the Fringe FM store. Also, Eric's has some new stuff at his store. Don't you do I seen this cool thing. You do people's like birth charts, like in an artistic fashion, right?
Oh, yeah. So earlier this year, what I did was I actually decided to illustrate a whole birth chart. I illustrated every zodiac. I illustrated all the constellations. I illustrated the planetary symbols, all of it. And the thing is, when I made the tarot deck, making the art taught me the lesson. Making the zodiac signs of the astral thing, I don't know what it is. What you create attracts you. The way that I have advanced my knowledge since creating this hand illustrated birth chart, not only did I reinvent my understanding of astrology, I think I brought back a deeper understanding that I only find in like older manuscripts. I assume this knowledge is available. It's just not easily available.
You found it
through
through
advanced.
right.
Yeah, I found it through exploration. Like when you have a happy accident in art, it just arrives. But for me, pursuing something, I want something artistic. I believe today, day and age, AI is going to become even more all over the place. And for me, doing something hand illustrated is the whole reason I created my last deck. I wanted something where the artist embeds their soul because they worked with it with their hand. I created every drawing, and that's what I'm creating with this. So now I built a whole system where I can make anyone's chart using this, all these drawings.
Yeah.
And I do the whole work myself. I look at your chart and I make sure everything's exact because I'm still doing this all by hand. It's still me. It's not like a program. That would be so much easier, and I'd offer that for free if I came across the right people to, properly create those types of like.
Sure, yeah. Dude, it's worth every penny. Yeah, I think it's beautiful. And if you guys want to
if
see
you want to honor that,
what I'm talking about, the artwork that I'm talking about, his tarot decks, the stuff that he's talking about now, I think you got some herbal stuff too. We'll talk about that. Just go to the website during the break because God knows you don't want to sit around here and watch the commercials on YouTube. Go to erictc.com. Give us about 3 minutes and then come right back. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere. This out-of-body experience thing that people tend to, or they're fascinated by it. Do you think there's like some kind of crazy calling for people to all that? To me, it's like all you have to do is experience it once. Like even if you're a skeptic, right? Just experience it once. And it'll like open up your mind to all this stuff that we talk about. It won't be so woo anymore, right? Like, and I'm not talking about a lucid dream. I don't know why lucid dream doesn't convince people as well as like an etheric experience, something that really freaks you out. I don't know why. I'm fascinated by that. I want people to do it. I want people to like face their fear and explore that type of consciousness because there's this thing that we're worried about, which is death. It's coming. The body's going to die, right? Like, and I think that freaks people out the most. I can tell it when I talk to some people about, you should just have an out-of-body experience. And they're like, yeah, but what about possession? What about, what if I don't come back? Those kind of things, right? And in my mind, I'm like, don't you want to see this place? Right? They're like, I don't know, dude. Like, I'm trying to control stuff again and force it. But when I was going around speaking, I was like, just the vibratory state. It's almost like I'm a kid with a toy that's like, can you just try it? And then I start to feel like a drug addict after a while, like a drug pusher in a sense,
It really comes down to the individual too. How much are they ready? For example, like, look at it. I'm sure everyone's like, oh, I wish I was psychic. I wish I can teleport. I wish I can do all these things, right? But the level that you not only have to train your body, but to embody within yourself. Like, for example, let's say your spine plays a huge role. So the fact that you have a society where you not only have these traumas happen to us, but we are exposed to so much that affects and accumulates not only in our spine. So our spinal connection, the way our electrical potential is arriving, that comes down to how much are we taking care of our own temple. So when we have a healthy temple, we can perform those spiritual arts with ease. When we're getting enough sleep, we're performing to show up just as we're performing to show up in our own life. When we're well rested and well fed, we have enough energy to do what we need to do. Most people, when they're having a dream and they don't remember it, their energy is not able to meet their energy that they were experiencing. So their ability to bring into awareness and embody that comes down to not only the physical body's relation to the individual. Like, for example, the ability to have good memory, to train yourself, Most people who even lucid dream have to commit to not only making the choice to have an experience, but to follow through to improve recall, memory. Outer body experiences, same way. You're understanding how to work with the body. We don't have experts in. We don't have this open common sense in.
Yeah, there's
For many of us, we see the potential. We see ideas. We don't know what works and how we work. Many people thrown in those experiences probably would get so freaked out they back off. And then, for example, let's look at psychic energy. For those who can tap into that, you gift that to somebody who's not ready for that. They don't know how to handle that. They don't know what's going on enough to process all the information. And I think at the end of the day, we're trying to gather as much information, not only to navigate the life we're here to, but to make sure that we're like not getting distracted or off our own path, because that could sacrifice not only our efforts, but our body or being. We can sacrifice through simply just digesting the wrong thing over time, and it accumulating can get our own way. And I think that's like one of the number one rules, that universe will show up as long as we don't get in the way. We know what we want. We know we want to achieve it. I've had lucid dreams. My first lucid dream is because I had the intent to lucid dream, because I had the intent to even like try working with crystals, try something new, try something to assist you. And I think when you look at food, you look at crystals, you look at the way that our reality is made up, our material, the way that we even have our symbols by us. We can be supported by this. We can improve our dreams, our recall, our way that we're building our body is just as much as our way of building our experience. Because when we can show up for it, even in the spiritual realm, many of us could have this 12th house desire. We could have this Neptunian call. We could have this way of wanting to tap into this light body. And not everyone's meant to have the experience, but some people are, especially in this body, in this world. Why? Because we're drawn to it. We're easily tapping into it. Sometimes it's ancestral. Many of us, I'm drawn to medicinal plants because of my history from my native history alone just brings me into that, because it's just something I'm drawn to. It's something I think is important. And that's the thing. When we're drawn to something, we see value. We see something that is more enriching than, let's say, will all the money in the world make you happy? No. But the things that will make you happy, those don't have a price. Those are things we value. That's the importance that only our language, by our light, is able to communicate. So it's particular, not only just the experience, but how are we communicating into experience? Sometimes we want to do everything. As a polymath myself, I know I can't do anything, but I'm going to try. And I think that's the best advice you can give people. If you're interested, try it. If it works for you, continue it. If you're feeling that it works for you, explore it. I think that's how we get into that state. That's how we develop psychic senses, our additional senses, our senses of not only to work with the information around us, but the senses that we have that are within us that we haven't even, you can say, activate, but in reality, you're just not paying attention to them. Like, for example, when you're focusing on autopilot while driving, all your senses are there. Your presence and awareness is there, but you don't have to commit to it. When you're focusing on something on a screen, you don't have to listen to everything else around you. You're processing what you're giving your intention and attention to. Intention is the connection of the eye. Attention is where it's coming from.
So
Letters really tell you it off.
Do you still have that video up on YouTube of it's old, I talk about it a lot, but the one where you're drawing out the hangman card? Do you still have that?
Oh, yeah. All of that's on my YouTube. You'll find all the time lapses. I love being able to capture art because you can show people not only how it's made, but you might inspire someone to actually pick up a pencil, pick up art, and actually take a whole route that they're drawn to. So I think us being able to express ourselves is just as important as art itself being shown to the world. I personally, the amount of stuff I'm finding on YouTube these days.
I can't explain, guys. I hear once I put the thumbnail up and put the all the stuff in the YouTube video, I'll leave a link to that video that I'm talking about. I can't explain the nostalgia of inspiration that I got while I was watching that, man. Just the feeling of the Hanged Man itself came out, and that whole experience and everything it represents. Just watching that video of that, like, making that card. Now that couldn't have been in just one setting, right? Is that like you would come back to it over and
It's
over
a
again?
cumulative. So I recorded all of my drawings when I made the Astro Light and I made Astro Herbal. So like all my herbalistic drawings of plants, I recorded each one. That took weeks on end, not only accumulating it, but then editing it, sorting it, putting it all together. The amount of work it takes to create a time lapse of just art in general. Me, I prefer doing it like you said. I like this live setting, real. As long as I can do it in the sitting, you capture it. But for larger projects, that requires time. So capturing that is worth the effort when you can just share something and see, even I can appreciate it. Even someone like yourself can appreciate it. It can inspire something and spark something within us. I think it's so worth it because today, as an artist, I'm getting into painting again. And I look at some of the people who can paint on YouTube now, what they're showing, what they're bringing to the world. Some of the things I'm seeing, I'm like, wow, if I was exposed to this sooner, I would have probably tried harder sooner, knowing how high the bar is. And I think as humanity, all we're doing is this raising the bar. The more we can show one another what we're truly capable of, just like outer body experiences, lucid dreaming, all of our potential is coming to awareness as we're becoming aware of, I guess you can say all of us. It could be the interconnectedness. I think it's a fractal sense. I think when we identify awareness itself, we will be interacting with something coming into our physical awareness because it's fractal. What you're going to see is it's playing out in the light body, and now it's playing out in the physical body. That's why when you have a dream, you can actually receive the information because those energies are with you presently. They're happening. How you're navigating that is how the material and the reflections are doing it. So you have the light, but then our light in the reflection is experiencing it because it has to be reflected first from the light. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I had some crazy. I remember the one time that the dream world was really talking to me. Like, so one time I had this dream when I was in Florida. I wish I could have gotten a hold of you back then, but we were kind of going through our own things, right? But this,
Life happens.
yeah, like this dream woke me up. Like a voice woke me up. I saw this pit outside my grandmother's house and these like workers putting bricks, and it looked like a well, right? One brick at a time around the well. And then I walked out the door, and once I walked out the back door of my grandmother's. I don't know how the timeline happened, but I remember seeing them put the bricks in the well. Walking out the back door of my grandmother's, looking on the ground, there's the hole where they were putting the bricks in. One brick at a time was the message, I remember, right? And all of a sudden, like this skeleton, this like Egyptian skeleton, and these snakes, big pink snakes came out of this hole. First, it was a skeleton. Then it started coming towards me. And then this big pink like cobra things came out of it, started coming towards me. And they were at my feet. And I put my foot on top of their heads, and you could just see the color go out in them, right? And this voice yelled at me in my dream, dude. It said, "Joe, take a new direction," like that loud. Take a new direction. And I jumped out of my bed and ran outside in that little studio on the beach, and my neighbor was outside just smoking a cigarette, and he's looking at me all crazy. He's like, "What the hell's the matter with you?" I said, "Dude, that was the craziest dream. Something just talked to me in my dream." And he's like, "I get those all the time." I'm like, "I don't. I have dreams or out-of-body experiences. I don't have voices yelling at me like that in my dream."
Yeah.
You know? So it's just, I don't know how to explain it. When you were talking about that, it was like I knew everything that it was telling me right then and there. But I don't think I would ever have experienced that if I was in a different state of awareness at the time, you know? I really don't.
It's give and take. Like, I think to myself too, like, you probably had to have that experience happen to you because something within your inner light wanted to communicate it to you. And when you're in tune to sync with that inner light, it's its way to speak the symbolism based off what your body's been through, whether it's your ancestors or experience, will pull you from that information. So you actually have a set of symbols. For any of us, looking at the day or night is how you can see how conscious and unconscious. Looking at your grandmother, for example, This is your ancestor. This is the way that's on the feminine side. This is the way that you're bringing in not only this feminine strong sense, but snakes in general, our spirit. It's the Kundalini energy people associate. The way that we have a snake come out, and the pink is feminine sense, but it's also this sense of this heart chakra, this rose quartz that people associate with this loving energy. It's not just feminine, it's this way of creating this redness, this form, but then creating so much light to meet that red that you've turned it pink. So to deconstruct that in real time, you're looking at this state of this way of transforming how you're creating to the world. And I think when we're creating to the world, that's feminine, but technically creation is feminine and masculine coming together. So I think many of us, I know personally, the eclipse changed my directions for sure. Most eclipses will change your direction and say, hey, it's time to try something new. North nodes is giving us this incoming energy because it's directed to pull it from there. Yeah. So like the new direction, whether we're communicating it through our light ourselves from our body, or it's the experience itself giving us that realization because we're ready for it. I think you can't have one without the other. Like it's like the chicken before the egg. We can't have the separation when you're both. Like, for example, you can't have the yin without the yang because one is operating as the other coming out. You can't have both. They're the same operation. When you have a stream of energy coming down into the ocean, you have this wave of charge going up the stream, connecting everything because of the electricity. We're emitting just as much as we're receiving, which is why we're like paradoxical. But that's why you look at the zodiac. We got to be a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you have both, you can meet them. Sometimes you have opposition. Sometimes it's challenges. It really comes down to how do we want to work with that reflection of light based off where we're coming into the equation.
I think one of the biggest messages that, like, one of the biggest reasons why I want to talk to you and have you on the show every now and then is this message of not just expressing yourself, but actually art is.
Yes.
Everything that you do through your heart becomes art in some form or fashion, I think. But art is a method of conscious exploration. It's not just psychedelics. It's not just meditation and breathing and making sure we get out of body or taking shrooms or doing ayahuasca trips or practicing ceremonial magic. All that stuff is conscious exploration. But I don't think in this day and age that we realize how important authentic artistic creation is a massive, massive form of conscious exploration, if not one of the biggest, if you ask me, and we have AI coming in. We've got everyone being able to put out content now. No one's scared to do their own thing anymore like they used to be, if you hadn't noticed. Thousands of podcasts, thousands of YouTube videos, AI coming in and saying, well, just give us the algorithms and we'll do it for you. To me, like, this is all the pressure coming in because something wants us to authenticate, right? Something wants us to do what you're doing, what I'm doing, what other people are trying to do. I just think it's important. It's very sad to me when I do readings for people or even just talk to people. They're like, I don't know what to do. I don't have a direction. And I'm just like, just start creating. Just figure out how to get back into that childlike energy and be adventurous again. Just start creating something, I just think it's real important to create. I mean, that's what you're here to do.
It is. I think your quickest way to create is to break out a random dance move. I think getting out of your usual is the best way to try something new, only because you need to shake off what you're carrying, what you're embodying. You need to shake off and just be in the present now. People turn to look at cannabis, for example. People utilize these types of avenues because for them, it's this tool for when they're getting too committed to getting tunnel vision. Yeah. They can be taken out from an experience from nature to be in the present and to ask themselves, do I want to reprogram? Do I want to go a different direction? Where do I feel now? People are asking themselves something that they don't give to themselves normally because they need to step outside the usual, step outside of it. When you go on vacation, when you go anywhere new compared to what you're used to, we're given a chance to not only be motivated to go in that new direction, but by doing so, by giving the freshness of not having the weight behind us, the familiarity is no longer holding our back. So we're being in the present, not because we're linked to the past, not because we're linked to experience, but because we're allowing ourselves to be. As long as we're being in the moment, we're going to arrive where we need to. And as long as those who are lost have no idea what to do, it comes down to what's the most important thing to you. And then even then, look back at when you grew up. What did you look up to? What are you drawn to? What did you want to be? What is it that got you up in the morning, that showed you this is worth living? I think for us, we live our ultimate art through being. I think myself, I can create whatever I want in the world, but my true art to be as an artist this time in life, not only are we coming in where we're not only showing our potential, but I want to be art of the life of art. I want to live a life so well that it is a work of art. And that's why I live each experience always creating something new. And I think that's what creation does. And that's why artists try to fractalize creation, because we are part of it. But when we're embodying to work with creation, we just have a little more components that are more balanced, just like creation does, because balance and harmony is how you bring in. But then in reality, chaos and dancing is all about feeling where you are and then navigating it from there.
A random dance move. So some of you guys that are stuck, remember that. Just pull out just some random dance move.
And look at this way. AI can tell you what you're going to do because it can track everything. Now, if you start introducing spontaneousness, you start dancing, not only is universe not ready to take on what you are in that moment, but your life changes in that instance. It's shaking it off, getting yourself ready, not only in the present, but to bring into new potential, something you never existed. With AI present, I'm even more drawn to go back to the traditional sense. I used to try digital art. I understand it's a potential to make things easier, but now we arrived where AI can not only generate video for us, we're going to be seeing content created where most of it is just generated content. Yeah. Now, the thing is, I like to argue both ways because, look, we can generate something and that might connect a child to become inspired by something they're drawn to quicker. The more variety we have is like the more variety of tarot readers available. The people we're drawn to, the energy we're drawn to, it's going to speak more about us than what we're doing, how we're enacting that. It's not just about a video game of a screen. These screens are just light going off. At the end of the day, we're not doing it tangibly. We're not working with the earth. Where are we at the end of the day? Where are we putting our energy? Because the digital world can connect us, but it's through planting seeds. It's through taking a chance to create. Do we actually, do we create something new and random that didn't exist before? Our bodies, we operate without control just as much as we're in the instance of things happening all at once. We're trying to show up for ourselves, but at the same time, too, we also got to be lenient. We can't be perfect 100% of the time.
When you did the Shadow Light Tarot, because I'm still thinking about that, watching you draw out that Hangman card, was it? How did that come to be? Like, did you have the whole thing like, I know exactly what I'm going to do with each card and all this other stuff? Or was it like spontaneous? When you say in the moment, was it like a whole planned outline of art, or did you just kind of go through it as it came?
I'm the type of person, I like to structure things. When you create structure, let's say you are laying out where you want to draw it. Now, there's going to be these in-between moments where in my composition, I have a vision. I bring that composition to be. Now, the thing is, there's two layers to it. In the future, I look back and all the secret geometry is showing itself in this composition. But then in my process of creating the art, there's these moments where there's nothing planned in these spots. It's what feels right. I'm doodling. When I was a child, I would always just doodle. I draw. I don't want to create something. Some of the greatest artists in the world aren't trying to create something. They just want to see what they're capable of. And I think that's what we're all trying to do. And I think an artist for myself, I just want to see for myself, can I do that? Can I pull that off? Can I show up for that? And I think I'm showing it to myself, not to deliver it, but for Shadow Light, for these tarot cards, I knew what I'm drawn to wanting to create. I created between 2010 to pretty much up until Shadow Light was released in 2018. all these esoteric design shirts where they were all illustrations. They were compositions that just inspire at the right time to write that idea down. And the follow through with it, like planting a seed, taking care to water it, making sure that I bring it to fruition, that I follow up not only the skills, but to bring it to the world. I want to deliver it. I want to not only succeed. It's not just trying to see if I can do it. It's seeing what it does after it does its thing. That's creation. We are brought into the world not to see what will happen, but to see what creation does on its own. And that's beautiful because art itself, we want to create. When I'm creating the tarot deck, I tap into each energy because I'm spending so much time into it that my experiences to me in that time span when I created it, I got to experience what it was like to be the hangman. I got to experience the hermit. I got to experience each of them as I was creating it. And universe does that. When we're pursuing something, when we're diving headfirst into it, draw sacred geometry, draw anything, write it down, take notes. When you embody it through your experience, through the motion, you're bringing it into your body, whether it's in your processing or not. Your body has muscle memory. You have an experience you can pull from. I, having a Saturnian, Capricornian, and Mercury working together, the way that I can not only reflect and pull from my memory from over the years is so systematically structured and long-term, but I can't always have that on me. But because I embodied it, I pull it into my field. I remember, I reconnect it to who I am because I know who I am, but I don't always carry it because it's simple to just be. But who we embody, our nature, what we have to offer, a lot of that comes from the experience. So when I'm creating something like the tarot, I want to create the little details because I'm having an experience. It's not that I need it to be this way. A lot of the things that happen in art are happy accidents. I think most of the inventions are happy accidents just as much as our realizations to be like synchronicity, giving us a pathway to arrive at a conclusion that could change the course of history. We can express something like an art, the art of expression, the way we can communicate now. This age of Aquarius in the age of divination is the internet, giving you so many readers, giving you symbols. It's no longer about the message of the symbol. It's the message of the symbol from the reader. Are there energies, an extension, a fractalization of you? So is the art you're creating a fractalization of you? For me, when I'm doing everything between the art, I'm filling it in, I'm having an experience, but I'm never knowing 100% how it's going to turn out. But sometimes I impress myself more only because I took a chance to find out what I'm capable of. And that is its own right to make yourself not only better, but to show up even more next time. And we're not here to do just one and done. Sometimes we have a task, but I'm pretty sure most of us here are living more than one day. And that's opportunity that is potentially arriving each second for us to navigate not only something new, but to create something that has never been created before. And in my eyes, I look at Leonardo da Vinci, Walter Russell, Nikola Tesla. I even look at Eric Casey. I look at Manly P. Hall. I look at all these individuals, even the architect Frank Lloyd Wright. His natural philosophy, the way that we can look at everything that came before us is the same way we can learn from family members growing up. We don't have to go to the same mistakes they did to make better choices.
Sure.
But the inspiration we're exposed to, we might have an age right now where we have AI, and AI can not only take in data, but we have a technological blanket of electronics, frequencies, all these fields emitting. Once you start storing this and collecting this data, once you start correlating how this data communicates to one another, you're starting to get more and more in a system where a smart car will be scanning every single environment it passes through because it has to. It has to have a sense.
Yeah,
So what kind of reality?
It's going to be just like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got you.
Going in directions where everything has to be tracked.
503 area code. It says connecting. I don't know. You might have to call back because it just looks like it's trying to get your phone call to come through, but whoever that is, just call back because I don't know why it's not. I tried to get it to work, but just call back. That's weird. It just got hung up. Somebody called from Oregon and it just got stuck there for some reason. Well, it's interesting, man, because AI to me is like, I had fun playing with it and I could see where it could become artistic.
Boy, that's it.
You know, like, because you could program it just like you could keep playing with the programs until it makes what you want it to make. And I guess in a sense that would be like art, but it just, people are so, like, I've heard a lot of artists that are afraid of it, but I think that you shouldn't be, because think about if it, let's say AI art becomes this big thing. Well, how valuable is unique art going to be now? Right? It's just like the first print of something. If someone makes something totally unique, someone looks at that and there's like, oh man, that has to be AI. And they're like, no, that's actually handmade by a person, 100% all the way through. It becomes a little bit more valuable, I think, you know?
That's the biggest reason why I actually not only try to capture how the art was made, but to show it. We don't know anymore sometimes when you start to introduce AI. And for me to implement these types of actions prior to AI being rolled out, I see myself acting in my nature to do something that I did not even foresee. And that's kind of us all being psychic in a nutshell without operating in the awareness of knowing what we're psychic about. Because we don't need to know what's going to happen, but we can trust our intuition. We can trust ourselves. But I think with AI, I have so much to say about it because I'm very much an individual who likes to see both sides of the coin. I see AI, a powerful tool. We can not only use this to create potential, but for example, an individual can now operate tasks that they probably didn't have enough skills to invest in because you don't outsource it, but you gain more control than you do outsourcing it.
Yeah.
And even then you can morph it. For example, an artist can take their whole body of art. I can take my whole body of art and I can train AI to take all this data, all this style and say, hey, get as close as possible to this. And I'll keep going at it. What we put into it is what we put out of it. But look at a video game. We can create the greatest video game in the world. But if you're spending too much time on a video game, are you living your life? We can see it as a toy. It's fun. But unless we're using it as productivities for a tool to help advance us, to move us forward for who we are, then the distractions are only there to tell us like a television, look at this. When in reality, we need to recognize our potential more. And I think we're going to see both avenues. We're going to see distractions taking away people being on a path that they could have, just as much as you're going to see people being empowered at this time. And it comes down to what you want to create. I know what you want to put into it is going to happen. You will see individuals make a whole amazing artistic movie out of AI. Why? Because they invested the time to be a perfectionist, to invest the time to perfect the little things. Even if the AI doesn't just generate everything, they're going to go through the effort of knowing their knowledge to put it together. But then you look at traditional art, the way that we're showing what's potential, what we're capable of. Not only are you embodying something, but you're saying, hey, you can do this too. And then I think the biggest thing for me growing up, witnessing so much potential in the world, is that I never thought nothing was impossible. I always thought to myself, cool, that exists. That's possible. If I want to, I could do that. And I think we're all doing that to a degree when we're exposed to so much. That's inspiration. But the exposure alone, when we're given the proper knowledge, we are actually not only more empowered, but we make strides that are not only going to take us even closer to our goal, but make sure we don't get off that path. And even if we meander on a detour, wandering a forest is nice because you might come across something that's beautiful. But when you're trying to get to a destination and you ended up going the other direction, that's just speaking the nature of how were you operating to honor yourself versus your goal. Sometimes we're not meant to arrive at the goal. Sometimes it's supposed to come up later at a different cycle. We never really know, but we always have the opportunity to revisit if the right time is asking for that. But we need to work with what we have. So it's so complicated to come back and forth at all. So it's all over the place.
Looks like we only got just a few minutes here, so hopefully we can make this quick. 503 area code. You're on the air. Who are we speaking with?
Jojo, it's Jamie. How you doing, guys?
What's up, Jamie?
Oh man, I feel that little respite about meandering the path and trying to figure out what the detour is. You know, since the last time we spoke, I was working at that slaughterhouse, and I actually got fired on my birthday.
Yeah, I remember.
So
probably the best present you ever got.
Yeah, literally what I've been telling everybody that has anything to say about it is it's a gift that they don't realize they gave me. However, I've been floating a little bit this last weekend. I made it down to a hide tanning workshop, and I got to tan my first sheep pelt.
Nice.
I was really just connecting with what Eric was having to say about creating and the way in which creation is impossible to be co-opted by AI when it comes to the more tangible things, because the forces that I connected with and the experiences I had out in the woods tanning that sheep hide, they tied into all of the synchronistic happenings that have been going on in my life for the last decade. So I can't stress that enough, that there is a very big reprieve in the creation during these aspects, and especially during these cycles, because I'm in the midst of my Saturn return, and it's been throwing me for a fucking ringer.
Yeah, it'll do that, right? Like, yeah, it'll do that. Just keep going, brother. Eric, your thoughts on that, man? Because we only got a couple of minutes here. I'm sure he's wanting to know what you think about it, right? Yeah. Jamie?
I'm going to have to reply. I think the idea is that he was in nature alone, realizing not only creation, but I think when we're in nature, like even the Japanese call this force bathing. When you're around life force itself, you're not only giving yourself more sustenance, but you're able to be more present. Even if you doing something that supports you in that nature give you an experience, I think we don't always realize some of the best gifts that were hurting us the most, took us in the direction that we would have not even took a chance, because we weren't taking a chance on ourselves. So we don't always know the other end of the outcome until we arrive there. So with a Saturn return, that's the biggest thing in a nutshell. You don't really know until after it happens. And watch what happens between age 30 and 33. That's the culmination, the crystallization of your fractal. So if you can get through this right now, you're probably going to enter into a whole new path, more in tune to you, especially since you're in the moment now communicating with this idea. Not only to communicate with us presently, but that shows you yourself taking action, which is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I deeply appreciate that insight. It's something that I've been struggling with a lot, this path of slaughter and butchery and sustenance from the land, but being able to reconnect with the butt end of the process is stuff that would normally just go to the landfill. It really did give me a large motivation to be able to move forward and start creating in a retroactive fashion, in the sense that these are all practices that have been used for millennia and have kind of fallen by the wayside.
Right on, brother. Well, thanks for the update.
Not even just the practices.
Yeah, glad to hear it, brother. Appreciate your phone call.
Cheers. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for all that you do, and I'll be talking with you soon, Joe.
All right, brother.
Great night, you too.
You take care. We have to end this shindig, but Eric, dude, stay in touch. I know you're like me.
There's more.
Yeah, I'm the same way too. People are like, "What happened to you?" Or whatever. Sometimes, dude, I go off on a hermit journey, and I've been known to do that on this show 3 or 4 times. People are like, "Where are you?"
Hey, dude, it's a natural cycle.
It's a part of it's a part of nature. I keep
reflection.
Right.
I've had my wandering days too. Sometimes you need to step away to wander, to reflect, and it's not just because you're trying to refigure it out. It's because you're waiting for the water to settle before you make a decision. Yeah. Sometimes your own water needs to settle before you need to step into the next cycle. And that's why when you're ending a cycle, like when you're coming to a Saturn return, a lot of things are coming to an end. A lot of things are transforming because they're revisiting something that is not only essential to who you are, but it's giving you the ability to fractalize it. Any cycle we're revisiting, whether it's a moon cycle, a Saturn cycle, a Pluto cycle, we're fractalizing the potential from when we last communicated with it, because we're always growing. Just like a chart transfers itself over time, we too, just like the light, take time to arrive. So as long as we give consideration to be adaptable, I think we all arrive where we need to. And if anything, even if we take a detour, I think some of us are going to just show up where we need to on universe, and that will get us back on track. All it takes is just a little bit of remembering who you are, and instantly your life can start to shape itself out. So you're never, never too late to the party of your own life.
Hell yeah.
At age, you will find something you love.
Eric Tecce, the true artist, the true Void Walker, also a friend of mine. And you guys know that this logo, all of the artwork on this show came from Eric. You can even see a signature down there at the bottom of it. And please go check out all of his stuff at erictecce.com. I will leave a link to that YouTube video that I was talking about. And maybe we can all experience the Hangman together. But yeah, support all his projects. We'll have you back on, brother. And thanks for coming on, man. It was a good time. It was a good having you back.
Glad to be here. Glad to be. And honestly, it's just the most amazing thing to be able to not only embody this, have this experience, but for us to communicate and bring this knowledge, not only openly, but out into the world. So with all that said, thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing yourself to actually follow through, to honor who you are, to have a show, to bring on not only communication, but the ability to not only shape others to have an experience, but to inspire them for a whole other generation. That's the greatest thing that you can do, because you don't even know the ripples of what you do. You just have to trust that what you do is true. And as long as you honor and get as close to that as possible, I think anything you're going to create is going to be a work of art. So thank you, Joe.
Oh, man. Well said. Thank you. And thanks, Jen, for the 50 on YouTube. You guys support the Fringe FM, support Eric. We'll be back tomorrow night. Good night, y'all. Sweet dreams. Happy astral travels. Night night.
Stay true.